So welcome. This is In Conversation with Pilvi Torsti. I'm Pilvi Torsti, Director of the European Training Foundation, ETF. And today I'm really delighted to welcome Arthur Erken, Regional Director of Europe and Central Asia at the International Organization for Migration that I think many of us know actually as an IOM. So welcome.
Thank you.
You, of course, bring very extensive experience to our discussion today. First, from the side of the UN, where you served before coming to the leadership at the IOM. And when I was actually reading the backgrounds, I think the powerful idea that you have always focused, and that is when people, and in particular young people, can really move and learn and work safely, it means everyone thrives, including our societies. So it is with this spirit that I would welcome you to also tell a little bit about your work. What does it mean actually to be a regional director at IOM focusing on these countries in Central Asia and Europe?
Well, thank you so much, Pilvi, first of all, for having me in your show. It's really nice. And looking at collaboration with ETF. So I'm the Regional Director for Europe and Central Asia, which means I cover, or the region covers everything from, let's say, Ireland to Kazakhstan and everything in between. So that's 57 countries and territories, and we have 46 country offices. So some of them cover more than one country. It's a vast region. It's, of course, also a very interesting region because of the topic of migration, which is, of course, very much in the news, as you know very well. So what we're trying to do, basically, the IOM has three strategic objectives, and that is, first, saving people's lives for people that are on the move. So that's very much in humanitarian crisis, making sure that when people start to move or want to move and have to move, they can do it safely. The second objective is looking at solutions for people that have been displaced, certainly those that have been displaced for a long time within their country, so rebuilding their lives, reintegrating into their country of origin, but in a different part of the country. And the third one, and very much, I think, the thing that we connect a lot is our facilitating regular pathways of migration, and that's really around labor mobility and of course in Europe. This is, of course, also a hot topic because of the narrative that we are dealing with, which is always not so positive, with the need probably for migration. I'm sure we come back to that in our conversation.
Yep. Thanks. I actually thought to bring to this conversation remarks you made at the Council of Europe last year. Mm-hmm. And you said, quote, "Migration has long been a cornerstone of development and progress." So let us expand on this idea a little bit more. How does migration really contribute to economies and societies?
So first, let's realize that migration is there since we were human beings. We have always migrated. I myself don't live in the country that I came from, and you also live in a different country. So migration is very much part of humanity. And what it has done, it has been, of course, a driver for innovation, for economic growth, for prosperity in general. And I think it's not always understood that it's not just that migrants help societies that they're going to, but also the societies they leave behind. The World Bank has estimated that for every 1% of immigration, an increase in immigration, can actually boost GDP by 2%. So there's a doubling effect for the fact that you bring people in with new skills, with new ideas, that drives innovation, that drives also productivity. So that's very important. And I think that's helping the countries that are receiving migrants. But of course, migrants send an awful lot of money back to the countries that they come from. So the whole issue of remittances is very often much larger, first much larger than ODA that countries receive, and even often larger than foreign direct investment by private sector. So the amount that migrants send back that helps their families back home in terms of education, housing, healthcare, and therefore also drives the economy in the countries of origin is huge, and very often not understood or not known. So migration overall benefits everyone if it's done orderly, if it's done safe, and if it's done in what we call regular pathway. So in other words, in a way that has a framework around which people try to move.
I think you rightly already hinted to the discussion we tend to have in Europe, namely that the irregular migration dominates easily the headlines. How does it actually look if you look at the numbers? And how could we probably also balance the public debate?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the first thing I think we have to realize that the irregular migration into Europe only represents less than 10% of the overall migration into Europe. So 90, 91, 92% of people that come into Europe are coming in a regular, legal way. And it's for basically three reasons. One is employment and labor. Second one, large group is students, international students coming to Europe to study at European universities. And the third large group is family reunification. That means people have the right to bring their families after a certain period of time. That part constitutes about 91% of migration to Europe. So the irregular side that gets most of the attention is actually 8-9% of the migration that's coming in. So I think one of the things that we need to amplify is that fact, because that fact probably consumes 90% of the debate around migration. And if I say this often, the reaction of many people when I confront them with this fact is, I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was 90% irregular, and that's not the case. So one of the things we try to do, of course, also as IOM, is at least to balance that narrative a little bit and saying, these are the facts. About 200,000 people try to get into Europe in an irregular way. That number has been declining even further in the last 2 or 3 years. And in balancing it off, you have about 2 million people that actually come into Europe every year in a regular legal pathway. So it's important that in the debate around migration, we start with facts, with actual facts of what's happening. We see also, of course, an increase in the demand of having discussions with countries around this whole issue of labor mobility, skills matching. A good example, it's really fascinating, is actually the Western Balkans. We might come to that, but it's really, if even 2 years ago, you would talk with those countries, particularly around the issue of irregular migration, transit countries, these were people that use the Western Balkans as an entry point into Western Europe. That number, that percentage has declined dramatically. So all of a sudden, and that's where we met, of course, in Montenegro, that all of a sudden these countries started to discuss and saying, wait a minute, we actually need people, because we've been experiencing immigration, people leaving their countries, Bosnia, Serbia, and we now need people to come to us. We need to become no longer a country of transit, but actually a country of destination. And that opens a whole different perspective for them, a realization for them that this will probably be the future of their country. And that, of course, is for me fascinating, and I'm sure for you too, and where we sit in the issue of what skills do you need, what will your labor market look like, where do these people come from, etc., etc.
Coming to the IOM, you've put forward the 5 key recommendations: building sound legal frameworks, fostering dialogue, protecting migrant rights, investing in integration, and enhancing cooperation against trafficking and smuggling. Just very briefly, what would be probably the most urgent that you would pick from these as we speak?
That's hard to say. I think they're all interconnected. So it's not when you do one thing, then you solve a problem, so I think they're all 5 important at the same time. I do think that given the current narrative around migration, obviously the issue of irregular migration and how you deal with it is certainly something that needs to be addressed, and people need to have the feeling that countries are in control over that process. I do think that's important to also then be able to discuss regular pathways. If people still feel that part, even though it's only less than 10%, but if that part is not well managed, it's very hard to sell a regular pathway and say we need people in certain sectors. So I do think the issue of smuggling and the issue of the fact that people try to come in an irregular way is a problem that needs to be tackled to allow a debate and an actual work on regular pathways. So I think the issue of the involvement of communities is very important. And I think the same thing or linked to that is the issue of integration. It's not good enough to say we need people to work in whatever the healthcare sector or in the agriculture sector. These are real people that will come to our communities. And so the issue of integration is an important aspect of the success of migration. And that cannot be underestimated by governments, by private sector. I do think the private sector has a role in ensuring that people integrate in the communities that they live. It's not that I work for 9 to 5 in a factory and then I go home somewhere and that's it. They live, they commute, they are part of a society, and I think that aspect is equally important and doesn't get the attention it deserves.
You mentioned the private sector, so let me follow up on that. We were actually, as ETF, partnering in the organization of a migration forum in Naples, which you were part of as an IOM, and then the ISPI, and that was part of the Mediterranean dialogues. And that forum was really focusing on the role of the private sector as part of the migration discussion. And how you see that organization like yours or like ours could perhaps create this kind of mutually beneficial, not only discussion, but really also concrete actions so that the private sector is fully on board?
Yeah. So what is very important, I think, for us in the international community is to try to triangulate, to bring these different stakeholders together. Private sector that needs people, the government that has the role for a legislative and legal framework, and of course, I think, and I said communities. I do think it's important these three, and we have a role to bring them together. As I said, I think it's not enough for the private sector to just say we need people and that's it. I'm not involved in the rest. I think it's important that they have a larger role, a social role as well. Understanding why this is happening, who do you bring, etc. So I do think from our side, and certainly also from your side, I think making sure that this is being taken care of is very important. I was not so long ago in Serbia, where we also partner with a private sector company. They have people from the Philippines, they brought people from Kenya, and it was exactly the discussion on integration and support that we focused on a lot. I get it that you need people, and fine, you find a way to attract people to come to your business. But for us, it's also important that the rights are being protected, that there is fair play, fair income, that there is ethical recruitment, and that people feel at home, that they feel that the society is taking care of them. That aspect is the most difficult one, and I think it's important for us to do it. At the same time, working with government on the legal framework and saying, yes, your businesses do attract skills from outside, and that's important to keep your business attractive and competitive. Is the legal framework there? I think the other thing that's important to mention here is that, which we not always realize, the big competition in the future will be around skills. Because globally, the world's population is, of course, declining. I mean, there's lower fertility. There are only certain pockets left that are having, let's say, relatively high fertility. Most of them are low fertility. Most of the world's population lives in countries that have low fertility. So the competition for skills is only gonna heat up. And that's why I think I don't want Europe to be a wall where we are kind of like saying we don't want people, to say no, it still needs to be a welcoming place. I get it, you want a welcoming place that you have control over. What are the skills you want to bring and attract? But we need to have that competitiveness for skills, because in the future, certainly young people will have the opportunity to choose. Do I go to Europe, or do I want to go to Asia or somewhere else? And we need to realize that it might be one of the biggest competition that we will see
you've said that we actually live in an era of immense demographic opportunity. And of course, at the same time in Europe and in also many of the countries where we work, we do face these challenges like in the Western Balkans. So if we package this, how do we turn this youthful opportunity and then the demographic reality into productive, inclusive workforce?
That's a very good question. I think, so in my previous life, this was of course a big issue around high fertility countries that don't generate enough jobs. And so young people obviously try to leave, which is not something that any country would like to see, of course. Any country would love to see the young people, of course, stay. So one of the things that I think is critical is, investing in young people and investing in their education is obviously the starting point. That will benefit all of us, but whether those that are stay as well as the people that in the end still decide to leave. I do think, and we are also advocating for the fact that, of course, we need, certainly as European countries, we continue to need to invest in countries that are less well off, and particularly making sure that their young kids are going to school, stay in school, complete education. That's in the best interest of all of us. And so that I'm a bit worried about the debate, of course, in general about ODA and less money for development, etc., because that money typically would go to social services, would go to better healthcare, would go to better education. And if we start pulling back, then it might be at the detriment of us, because it means less skilled young people that are probably want to move, but without the right skills. So I do think, and we all think, that that should not be forgotten. And it would benefit, as I said, both the countries of origin, people stay, as well as the countries, of course, that in the end will benefit from some that will leave. It's still important that everyone benefits from development. And the world is just a better place if the inequality that we see is being drastically reduced, because that drives an awful lot of other problems, poverty, environmental degradation, and not just because of people want to do it, but they are almost forced to do it. Climate change in general, which of course is a whole other topic that drives people to move. It's better that we, in principle, of course, keep on investing in the countries where people are, where they live. Most people, of course, want to stay in where they are and where they were born, and make sure that that's first taken care of. And then we'll see what the outcome will be. That people, as I said, some will still decide to leave and find better opportunities. But at least the foundation is there.
Arthur, we have a tradition here in conversation with Pilvi Torsti that the previous guest has left a question that even I don't know what it is, and I am going to now ask it from you.
All right.
And the previous guest this time was the EU Special Representative to Central Asia, Mr. Stiprais. And let's see what he has asked from the next guest. What may be the future professions and occupations that we have no idea about right now?
Wow. Gosh, if I had a crystal ball, I would have been... So here's the thing. People tend to think, probably as my answer, tend to think that it's all about high tech, AI. But first, I will always say there are certain skills that we will always need now. Even in our debate on migration, often you hear people say, oh, there's good migration, there's bad migration. Good migration is the one that have ICT background, or those we want. But the low-skilled ones, no, that's not. But in fact, we need the low-skilled ones. We need the plumbers, we need the electricians, we need those that can still do that work. So I think there are certain jobs that will just stay, and that's probably important. But the new jobs, I think obviously, or not obviously, but I do think AI will certainly drive certain jobs out of the market and no longer needed. The worry there is, by the way, that I think a lot of entry-level jobs that we currently still have, those are the jobs that probably might be disappearing because of AI, but it will also create probably new skills and new jobs that can turn AI into a productive asset.
And again, connecting,
And
which
connecting,
is very
correct,
often I
correct,
think we see.
correct.
So now I would invite you to give a question. And again, we have no idea who will answer to it.
Oh my gosh.
But
Okay, let me see. Okay, good luck for the person.
thank you very much. And my last question to you, if you will look 5 years ahead, what do you think the IOM and ETF cooperation could look like?
Wow. I hope we have a strong partnership because I think we're operating in areas where we do have connections. I think it's a growing market. I've been saying this for a long time. Just looking at the development of Europe and where it's going demographically, economically, socially. So I would love to come back in 5 years' time, or if not earlier, and we look back at this moment and saying, wow, remember that meeting that we had, that day we had in 2025, and look where we are now. I do hope, by the way, in 5 years that some of the countries you currently work in, that you call your neighborhood, might have become part of the EU. So you might have also diversified by that time the countries that you collaborate with, because the neighborhood will then move a little bit, east, south, whatever. And I hope we still partner because we're there too. And we can look back and toast on a good 5 years of collaboration.
Thank you very much for the entire thought-provoking conversation. I think we really take away also some numbers. Over 90% come for work, education, or love or family. That the youthful opportunities that we really have in the countries where we work at, and that we need to be just evidence-based in the public debates that tend to have a little bit probably misled emphasis at the moment. So we will continue linking mobility and skills. I thank you for this conversation. I thank you for our viewers. I'm sure there are lots of young people who are also thinking about migration as an issue that may be part of their future. As heard, it's been part of our families' backgrounds as well. And we continue working for the sustainable development of our regions. Thank you very much for all of you. Thank you very much, Arthur.
Thank you, my pleasure.